Hello and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It's September, did we just say 20th?
Yeah, we did.
September 20th, 2016. We're broadcasting, or we're recording live from, what city are we in?
I don't even know what city we're in.
Somewhere an hour and 20 minutes southeast of Durham, United Kingdom, which is in England. And we are recording our second episode of our UK series, our series on Mormons in the UK. We interviewed Nathan Lisco a few days ago, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be interviewing our special guest today. His name is Alex Winters. Hello, Alex.
Hello, John.
Welcome to Mormon Stories.
Thank you.
It's like 11:30 p.m. at night. We're at this beach house that we rented. After I presented at the University of Durham on my LGBT research. So for all of you Mormon Stories listeners, you do not fund global trips for me. I was in the UK because the University of Durham asked me to consult with them on how to help the Anglican Church deal with their LGBT members, because the church is being ripped apart by that issue. So because they flew me out here, I've been tapping various British Mormons that I know to do this episode. What's so funny?
I like the theatre setting.
Welcome to Masterpiece Theatre. I'm your host, John DeLynn.
Inside the actor's studio.
James Lipton. Okay, so we're being silly because it's so late. But Alex Winters, those of you in the States will have no idea about this, but Alex is actually a national television celebrity here in the UK. He's the presenter for a children's television program called CBeebies. Think of like Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers or Blue's Clues or whatever. He's kind of one of the celebrities or stars on that show. He's been doing it for about 7 years. He's from Wales, served a mission, church member. Something that's super interesting about him was the LDS Church recently approached him a few years back to actually be the face for their I'm a Mormon campaign. So he's definitely very well known, and we're thrilled to have you here, Alex, on Mormon Stories. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
You're much bigger in real life.
I am a little bit tall.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit short. So I'll try and sit up.
I'll squatch. We are recording this on video, so if you want to watch on YouTube, you can. I met your wife, Jo, back in February. That's where I learned about you.
Yeah.
And I've been eager to get to know you ever since. So we're going to talk about your Mormon journey in the UK.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Perfect.
All right, let's dig in. So tell us a bit about your heritage in the church. Are you first generation, multi-generation?
So I was born and brought up in Cardiff, in Wales, and my parents were converts in their early 20s, I think, and they were living in the valleys where the start of the coal mining sort of was, quite famous valleys there, and it was a really small branch. In fact, when they were baptised, I think my dad was one of 2 males, and then I think my mum was one of 4 females. So really small branch, and then they moved to the city in Cardiff where I was brought up, which is in the South Wales, the capital of Wales. And yeah, all my brothers and sisters, we were all baptised and all grew up in the church.
How many siblings?
So we lost our eldest brother, and then I have 2 sisters above me, then myself, and then my younger brother.
It's kind of a big family for England, right? For the United Kingdom.
Oh yeah, you got that right.
Wales is not England.
No, it's like America and Canada. Wales, England.
Okay.
No, yeah, it's quite a big family, and I think my parents always wanted a big family because my dad's an only child and my mum is one of 2, and they're great parents, and so yeah, quite a big family for here.
And how old were they when they joined, about?
They were... There's an 8-9 year age gap. So I think my dad was late 20s and my mum was sort of earlier 20s.
Okay, so you would have been born in the covenant.
Yes, yeah, I was, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, so you grew up primarily in Wales then?
Yeah, yeah.
And what ward were you in?
So we were in Cardiff, and
Cardiff Ward.
Yeah, Cardiff Ward, and the stakes changed because it's quite a. The church was quite spread out over Wales, so not massive. You know, very well supported, and so the members there were, you know, and still are, you know, wonderful members and hardcore, and very proud of the sort of pioneer roots, really, of the church, because so many people from Wales followed the pioneers and went over. So maybe few in number, but, you know, strong in heart when it comes to the church. So I think when I was really young, the stake we were in spread from where I lived in Cardiff, which is southeast Wales, right across to West Wales, which is a good few hours, and that was the one stake. There's now 2 stakes, and so the church has grown stronger. But we, you know, out in the real world, I was very much the odd one out. There was me, my siblings, and then one other family in school who were, you know, members of the church, so it was, you know, we were still quite an oddity.
How many members of your ward do you remember, kind of as you were growing up?
When I was growing up, we had quite a big ward, and I'd like to say we went through sort of various stages, but in general, I think, and this is from my days of sitting on the stand with the bishop as a deacon, counting the numbers, walking up and down the pew, counting the members. I think we're about 120 to 140, so quite a big ward for, you know, for Britain anyway. But out in sort of school and out in society, growing up, you know, I was the only sort of Mormon where I lived in my age group.
How did your participation in the church show up in your family? So were there traditions or weekly or daily activities that were Mormon that sort of you remember as being part of your family's regular life?
You know, my parents were and still are, you know, really good members, and they always tried their best to do what was expected. So Monday night family home evening was very much a tradition, and I'm from a very working class family as well. My mum and my dad both worked so hard. I mean, at one time, my mum was in 3 jobs. She'd be up at silly o'clock in the morning, off cleaning, and then go into another job. And
did you just say silly o'clock?
Yeah,
I love that.
silly o'clock, because it was so early, so early. And so whenever possible, we would have a home evening, and then Saturday nights, although not strictly church related, Saturday nights would always be on the sofa together. I say preparing for the Sabbath, but then it would be sitting on the sofa together, and we'd make sure we'd have family time, and it'd be watching the Muppet Show and then the Dukes of Hazzard.
Love the Muppet Show.
Yeah, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then off to bed and ready for Sunday then, and those Sundays were always busy. So nothing out of the norm, to be honest. They you know, my parents tried really hard to do what was right. So family home evening, and my friends knew that Alex wasn't allowed out on a Monday night after tea, because I'd have family night. So
tea was at what time?
So Dad would get home 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then I think me and my siblings used to try and make family home evening go on as long as possible so we could stay up late. You know, if we got to stay up till 7:30, we were like, yes, this is late. And I always remember we'd always take it in turns as well to prepare a family home evening. And I remember that being an exciting thing, preparing a lesson and an activity and you know, a treat afterwards. So, you know, fairly standard Mormon fare, to be honest.
So daily family prayer?
I think we were like many families. We'd go through phases. We'd try and do it in the morning, but my dad would be gone, and then with so many of us off at school at different times, and then we try it the evening, and so we try.
Yeah, sure.
We try our best.
Sure.
And it was hit and miss, but we had family prayer, and often it would be round the table, and my mum would often give a really long prayer blessing the food, and me and my brothers and sisters sort of sneaking one eye open because we were starving and wanting to just eat our meal. Mum was sort of taking that time to have a family prayer at blessing the meal, but she's a wonderful woman.
What were your fondest memories of like attending church and participating in church in Wales?
So church was a funny one because I grew up and essentially there was me and one other lad, and then another one joined a bit later, and then two girls. So at times it almost felt quite lonely, even though I had some great times, and youth. We had youth activities on a Wednesday, and they would again be hit and miss. I used to look forward to a Wednesday, and if we could somehow gather enough kids together to play football or something, that'd be brilliant. It'd be a great Wednesday night. But I remember my parents trying hard to create things for us because, unlike Utah and other places, we just weren't surrounded by members. So you'd have to sort of work hard to have some kind of activity, or to be surrounded by friends. It'd involve a lot of travel, or so my life was actually quite split. I had just as much of a social life outside of church than I did in church, really. Especially as a younger lad, it would just be with the boys who lived near me, playing football over the field. But then I knew that Wednesdays, no matter what, was youth night, and then Sundays, it was expected of me to get up and go to church.
Do you remember primary songs? Learning primary songs?
Yeah, do you know what? When I went for my audition for CBeebies, which is the children's channel on the BBC, they said, could you sing a couple of songs? And I actually sang a couple of primary songs.
Popcorn popping?
I've done popcorn. I did popcorn popping, and actually on camera I did.
Sunbeam?
If you chance to meet a frown, do not let it stay. And I was like, that is perfect for children's television. And they were like, that's great. What are those songs? I was like, just songs I know.
Pick them up.
Just growing up here and there. And I think a couple of parents caught me out on that. I was somewhere visiting a ward somewhere, and I think a couple of parents said, "Did we hear you sing a primary song on CBeebies?" And I was like, maybe. But no, I loved primary, and I was a bit of a singer when I was young, and I mean my mum would any opportunity have me singing a solo in Wales. We have something called an Eisteddfod, okay, and Eisteddfod we have annually, generally around St David's Day. Now St David is the patron saint of Wales, so March the 1st we'd have an Eisteddfod, and the church was big on this. An Eisteddfod, the congregation, and it generally be a stake meeting, so we'd get all the stake together, and you would have singing, so there'd be musical competitions, so whether it was playing instruments, I played the violin really badly. I have awful memories of that. Singing solo, choirs, because in Wales we're famous for our choirs. And then there'd be poetry. And so the Eisteddfod is a Welsh social thing. It's not a church thing, but the church adopted it, and rightly so. It's a wonderful thing. And so, Yeah, we were always singing. In fact, my family, we got the nickname the Von Trapp family because we were always singing as a family here and very musical. And my sisters played the piano. One of them played the violin very well. Both good singers, and yeah, so we were a very musical family, very typically sort of Mormon that way, and still are, I suppose. We're still all very musical. But yeah, I love the primary songs. There's some belters, aren't there? There's some brilliant ones. And I love the church hymns as well. So yeah, no, we had a very typical. I remember Mum and Dad scraping enough money together to get a piano at home, and that was it. Then there was no stopping family home evening. And in fact, we used to have the ward choir would come and rehearse in our living room.
Was it like 8 people?
It was. Yeah, I mean 10 if we were lucky. But I just remember thinking, what are the neighbours thinking next door as they could hear whatever it was, you know, I believe in Christ being sung, you know, all verses sort of thing.
That's great. So the experience that many of us had with like youth conferences, temple trips, missionary weekends, stake dances, regional dances, was that part of your youth?
Yeah, it really was. And I think...
And seminary too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I may be out of line saying this, but I think they might be sort of more important to us in Britain than perhaps in a place like Utah. And I hate to keep pointing the finger at Utah because I know there's other places that don't have a dense amount of members, but especially in Britain I think those things were really important because so many of us just felt on our own, because even within our ward and our stake we were really spread out and were probably or very likely the only kids in our school who were Mormons, and so local dances, stake dances, conventions, and especially through youth as well. I mean, we made Britain, I know Britain is small, but we made it even smaller, and we would travel hours for a youth dance, and that was actually a really integral part of growing up in the church, I think, in Britain, was the conferences and the dances, because I think you were looking for that support, because you want to feel like you're part of something, and that was hard to feel when there was perhaps just me and my best friend Ray. It sometimes didn't feel like you felt part of something, or it felt like you just were part of something old. So going on Sundays and just surrounded by oldies and parents, and which grief got a bit boring for me and Ray, the only sort of priesthood our age there at age 12 or 13 or 14, and feeling perhaps left out. So right through teenage years, those things like conferences and dances were so important, and it's how you met other people. And I think it's the reason that I got through church through my teenage years. And I think if I hadn't have had those dances or conferences and a sister willing to drive or my parents willing to drive, maybe I'd have left church as a teenager, because socially that's what was important then. I think my testimony, I was just going on my parents' testimony then, perhaps. So I think they were really important to my upbringing, and for me personally as well. When I got to a certain age in my teenage years, 'cause I'm a really big music fan, I would DJ some of those dances. So that was almost like a hook that kept me there. And I think
you were DJ.
Yeah.
I was DJ.
After were you?
Yeah.
What was your best tune? What was your big tune? What was your dance floor?
Oh, safety dance.
Well, I don't even know.
You can dance if you want to. I think it's a British song.
Safety dance.
No, I love it. Rock Lobster.
Oh yeah, the B-52s. Love Shack.
Love Shack.
Oh my gosh, Love Shack. That's a church dance song if ever, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I think that was.
What was your favourite song? What were your standards?
I don't know. I was a real indie. I was a real indie kid, so I played a lot of British indie stuff, you know, Oasis maybe, you know,
Yeah,
Oasis and Blur and all that. Stone Roses, try and throw a bit of punk rock in there. I remember one time I played, are you aware of The Prodigy at all?
Heard it. Yeah.
Bit of hard electronic sort of dance, and there was a song Firestarter, which was, you know, a bit of an aggressive dance. And I remember the stake president pulling me aside. Alex, I'm not sure that's quite appropriate. You know, do people know this? Do people know what songs you're even playing? I'm like, and you know, I was trying to be cool. Yeah, this was #1 in the charts, President. Honestly, everyone likes it. And I think there may have been 5 people dancing. But those things were important in my social life, in keeping me interested in church. That, and then, you know, stake athletics.
What sports did they have?
So stake athletics, it was pretty thorough actually, because we'd have indoor athletics, and then later in the year, in the summer, we'd have the or indoor sports, and then later in the summer we'd have the athletics. So we'd hire out a local track. We do all the track races, high jump.
Oh wow, like track and field.
Oh yeah, track and field.
I've never heard of that. Never heard of that. That's cool.
What?
Yeah, we never did that. We never did that.
Yeah, we have. That's a massive thing in Britain.
Wow.
Because we'd have stake, and then we'd have regional, and then area. And so we'd be like, yeah, we're going to Birmingham, and we'd all be in a car or whatever, and travelling 2 hours to go and run, you know, against the best of the Birmingham or whatever Mormons, you know. And that was that was a big thing. And again, I think, you know, maybe you didn't have that. You're from Texas, is it? I don't know. I don't know if that was, again, a British thing, because it was something else to keep us together. Because, you know, I can't stress enough, there's no dense population of Mormons, and so you really would be. And so, you know, it was I think, whether that was a conscious decision or not, I don't know, but trying to keep us together and as many activities as possible, which, you know, it was a good thing. And I have no bad memories of that. I used to love it, being sporty as well.
What were your events in track and field?
So I was a sprinter. So, and I did long jump as well. I wasn't bad at high jump for a short bloke. I've got quite a good, I get good air, John. I get good air. I used to like playing basketball. So yeah, track and field, I was a sprinter, and I was a tidy footballer as well. So our indoor sports, we'd have five-a-side, volleyball, table tennis, and this would be ward against ward and things. And it got competitive. Let me tell you, there was some tempers lost at those things. I think it's like your sort of church basketball and things like that. So yeah, again, really important and a great way of meeting, you know, other members as a youngster. Sure,
absolutely. How about, did you say outdoor sports besides soccer or football?
Yeah. You know, rugby. We'd play everything.
Rugby?
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, I know. Wales is the home of rugby. I know some New Zealanders might argue against that, but Wales is the home of rugby. Yeah. But I think sports have always been, especially in church in Britain anyway, really important. I mean, because there was back in the 70s probably, there was something called the baseball baptisms. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, or if you had something similar.
My first episode of Mormon Stories talked about that.
Really? And did you have them in America, or was it just
I had them in Guatemala.
You had them in Guatemala as well.
They've been in Japan, but in Guatemala it was soccer baptisms.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, but in Japan it was baseball baptisms.
Yeah, and I think anything to entice people in and to, you know, teach people about the church, and so I think sport and church in Britain.
Yeah. Anyway,
I can only speak for Britain, as being sort of intrinsically linked in some way.
That's awesome. So, what teachings of the church or doctrines did you really identify with as a youth? Were there any, you know, did you have a testimony? If so, what was it really rooted in? Was it stories of church history? Was it Book of Mormon, where you just didn't care about any of that and it was just social? Do you remember? Was it your patriarchal blessing? Do you know?
No.
Did you have a testimony as a youth?
Yes.
And what
Yes,
was it based on?
I thought it did. Well, at least I bore a testimony, and I don't want to retrofit anything. I believed I had a testimony, and it was based. I had the cliche thing of, I think I rode along my parents' testimony, and again, they're both still with us, and they did wonderful things and gave great sacrifice, and still do, to the church. My dad was in all kinds of callings, bishopric, on the stake, and likewise my mum. And I think I just went, I think it was very simple. I can't say that I had, this wonderful testimony, and I don't think it sort of mattered. It was just based on what I thought felt right and what I'd been told. And at the time, I didn't even question that as a teenager, because I just felt, all right, I'm doing the right thing here. And then I just wanted to get on with playing football and, being the next Bono. Because that's all I wanted to do was perform and, head up the next big rock and roll band, until I realised I couldn't sing that well. I just wanted to do other things. So I think it was, even though I've said it was small, because there were so many social things going on, it was because I am that kind of person. I love being social. So I just think my testimony was very simple. So if I'm trying to think of principles and things like that, I'd be struggling, because it was just a very simple testimony, and I thought that Joseph Smith was a prophet. I thought the Book of Mormon, he translated it. I felt good about it. And I had spiritual experiences with my peers, and it was...
Any big ones that you remember, or is it just...
Do you want to... No, and I think it was the usual, which was, at the end of a youth convention, and everyone bears their testimony, and you feel that spirit, and I'm not going to deny that. You feel that wonderful feeling in the spirit, and you're all bearing testimony, and everyone's crying, and at that moment in time it feels like the best thing ever. And that was good, because that helped create sort of lifelong friendships, but it wasn't till I was an older teenager that I really started to think about some things, and sort of start having some questions that I perhaps didn't follow through with until later on in life.
What were they?
Do you know, the one thing for me, growing up and being very involved with drama and performance, I was out there in the world, and I was amongst all kinds of different people. And
this is high school now you're talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And being very sort of predictable here, but it's true. Being in the theatre world, I had quite a few gay friends. And early on, I was concerned about the church's and the gospel's view of homosexuality. And I remember that being my first real question, and something that I struggled with. Not that I struggled with homosexuality, but having friends outside of church who were gay, and me being friends with them, I felt like I was being two-faced. Not that I was homophobic, never was, never have been. But really, I think it was the first time I experienced cognitive dissonance, because I knew that from what I'd been taught that homosexuality was wrong, and it was not going to get me to celestial kingdom. The right way is man and woman, man and wife. And I had a really tough time with that. And I remember speaking to my mum about it. And, she said everything that I would have expected. She said, they're still our friends, we love them, don't treat them any different. and why should we? And I was sort of all right with that, but there was just that nagging. But that's not what the gospel tells us. The gospel tells us that it's wrong what they're doing, and I felt awful about that. And you know, I just had an experience on the weekend, and we'll come sort of full circle back to that niggle I have about the church's view on homosexuality. And that was my first, you know, everyone uses the shelf. And that was the first thing that I just thought, okay, I'll put to the back of my mind. But the truth is, it was never really sat back there. It's always sort of been at the forefront. And so that was the first thing that I really started to question, and always have done.
That was pre-mission. That was high school.
Oh yeah. That was teenage years. I mean, I didn't go on a mission until I was how old was I? 25.
25?
Yeah, I was.
Whoa.
Yeah, because between there and there, you know, I've got a bit of a story. So.
Okay. So, really quickly, was it part of your upbringing for stories to be told about the early British missionaries, the British saints? Was that, I'm just curious if that sort of oral history of the UK's role in...
I think it was, I think we yes, definitely, because we'd have Pioneer Day, you know, Stake Pioneer Day, and we'd all dress up as pioneers, and you know, I'd dress up in
American pioneers?
A lovely frock and bonnet I had. No, only on a Thursday. No, we dress up because, you know, a lot of the pioneers came from Britain and Europe, didn't they?
That's right.
So, you know, there was no American pioneer, come on.
That's true.
But yes, there were, especially being in Wales, and we're a very proud nation in Wales. We're proud of everything. Proud of being Welsh, proud of a rugby team, proud of our traditions, you know. And so in church that was no different. So Dan Jones, I'm not sure how many members of the church outside of Britain really know about Dan Jones, but in Wales we certainly do. He was a wonderful missionary, a very successful missionary who, on his second time of coming to Wales, took thousands with him over to America. And this is where our real pride comes in as a musical nation. You know, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir essentially started from the Welsh, because we really are a nation of singers, and it would be a tradition of choirs. And so many were going over with him, and they'd be singing on the journey. And you know, there's lots of records or writings, should I say, of, you know, these musical saints and these musical pioneers. And you know, a lot of that was the Welsh saints going over to the States. So we're very proud of that, and not that it was taught any more than anything else, but yeah, I think we were very aware of the pioneers. And you know, even in recent years, in the past 10, 15 or so years, you know, we have the tall ships in Liverpool. So I think the Brits were very, very aware, and I suppose proud, you know. And there's the one quote, and I think it was from Dickens. I want to say it was Charles Dickens, and please correct me if I'm wrong, who was commenting because he was at the ports and watching these people go to the States, and he said, you know, it wasn't just any old riffraff. It was the pride and flower, the pick and flower of England, is what he said. And again, if I'm wrong, I apologise, but it was someone like that. I'm sure it was Dickens. So yeah, there is quite a pride. I mean, in one of the temple buildings or in the temple, you know, there's a picture of Dan Jones teaching the people of Wales. And actually, the second language that the Book of Mormon was translated into was Welsh. So, and back then, in North Wales, that would have been applicable, but in South Wales, I don't think, you know, the language was spoken too much. So, the Welsh are proud of their Mormon roots. And I remember getting my hands on a Welsh Book of Mormon for my mission president, because he was super excited to see the Book of Mormon written in, you know, the Welsh language.
Can you speak Welsh?
Oh, only a tiny bit conversation.
Do a little bit, just so we even know what it sounds like.
Alex dwi, dwi'n byw Manceinion. So it's exactly.
What did you just say?
I said, my name is Alex and I live in Manchester. It's a really, when you get going, it's a really beautiful language, I think. There's a lot of and people, that grates with a lot of people. But it's a very sing-songy, and outside of Cardiff, because because of the history of it being a big port, it's become very cosmopolitan. So we sort of lost our accent and things. It's a big melting pot of, you know, world nations. But outside, when you get towards the valleys, it's very Welshy. You know, like Tom Jones. Tom Jones, he's up here and down here when he's speaking, and and it's not unusual to have fun.
Was he Welsh?
He still is.
Is he still alive?
Tom, of course he is, man. Yes.
I had no idea. Thought he was American.
No.
I've only heard him sing.
Tom, you need to hear him speak better now. So yeah, the Welsh, yeah, we are very, and the Brits in general. I think the LDS Brits are very proud of that, you know, that pioneer heritage and what we've contributed to the church.
So what took you so long to go on a mission?
So I think what I did was, you know, what many youth do before university. As a teenager, 17, 18, 19, you know, I went the way of the world, was more interested in rock and roll than passing the sacrament, perhaps. Not that I was a wayward child, but especially when I went to university, I went to a place where the ward, I just felt it wasn't the strongest of wards, and there were just pretty much no young adults there, and so I just went off, and I was inactive.
This is in Liverpool?
Yeah, I went to Liverpool,
okay.
And studied drama, theatre studies.
What university?
Liverpool.
The University of Liverpool?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've got the Beatles stamped on my certificate. And so I became lazy and, you know, just chose not to, just chose to do other things. And so, for a good few years of my life, the church just wasn't important. You know, it took a back seat. And then, you know, I sort of got myself in trouble, and just became my life got a bit of a mess. And I think through some of my choices, and there's a wonderful family in Manchester, and I call them and I won't say the names on here, but I call them my second mum and dad, and they essentially saved me in that last year of university, and so I basically lived with them in Manchester and travelled back and forth to Liverpool.
How far is that drive?
I used to jump on the coach or the train, it's only half hour.
Oh, okay.
In Britain, that's a long way. As you found out. You live half hour from your neighbours, don't you, in Texas? And so they sort of saved me, if you like. And so I would live with them.
How'd they save you?
Because, you know, living with them...
They invited you to live with them?
Yeah. They basically said, right, come back.
Because they saw you were down and out, or what?
Yeah. And I just wasn't happy, you know.
Was it just like alcohol?
Yeah.
Or just partying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was that, and I think that's one of the, be careful how I say this, but I think that's almost one of the dangers of having that repression as a youngster in life, is that there's the potential to just, when you're away from the church, or in certain circumstances, just to go bang and go all out. And I feel that perhaps that's something I did. It was.
And you weren't happy? Or were you?
No. And I think as well, I was also confused, because there was guilt, and you know, maybe that's because I'd I'd moved away from the Spirit, stepped away from the Spirit, and that I wasn't, making correct choices. And so my second mum and dad, they came and saved me, if you like. And I'll always be grateful, because I don't know what state I'd be in now, or where I'd be in life, no matter my position with the church now. I don't know where I would be without them. So I love them, and I'll always be grateful. And so in living with them, there were certain standards that I had to live to, as my parents at home would expect. And so they got me going to Institute, and so I started going to Institute, and that's where I met Joanne, who's now my wife. And
in Liverpool?
She was studying in Manchester.
Manchester, okay.
Yeah, and so I would just go back for my lectures and things in Liverpool that last year, and whilst in Manchester, I was sort of becoming familiar with the church scene again. And it's, our eyes met across a crowded room.
I've seen that smile somewhere before.
Please continue. And that, I think that changed me, because I think I'd gotten myself into such a mental position, just in life in general. I met Jo. She was funny, really smart. She's an academic, but she was hard work. I didn't know whether she wanted to talk to me, whether she liked me or anything.
She wasn't easy.
Her nickname was the Ice Queen.
Oh.
And
Elsa, what is it?
Elsa,
Frozen?
Frozen, Elsa and Anna. she I mean, the Ice Queen. And no, she doesn't suffer fools gladly. Although she humours me all the time now. and over a period of weeks and months, I became obsessed with her, and I in a nice way, and I wanted to ask her out, and I started to feel like I wanted to change my life because of her, and I felt that the way my life was at the moment, there's no way she'd even look at me. There's no way she'd even consider going out with me, and so I tried to change, and then, in a very Hugh Grant kind of way, asked her out one evening in the car as she was dropping me off, and I was all, if you'd, if you don't mind, you don't have to. And she reminds me of this now. She laughs. It took me like half an hour just to say, do you want to go to the cinema together? And to my surprise, straight away she went, yes. I was like, oh, really? Are you sure? And so we started dating, and to be honest, I forgot everything else, because I fell in love with her pretty quickly, and so I felt like I was going to do whatever it took to be with her. And I think alongside that, going back to church, going back into routine, doing the things that I felt I should, I turned my life around. And I think I needed that. Again, no matter what my position and thoughts are now, I think I needed that at the time. And I will always believe that someone somewhere sent Jo to me, sent Joanne to me. And she just helped me out. And she didn't realise it at the time. And I didn't tell her till later on. And so I then, after I finished uni, I graduated, I started thinking, what does this woman need? What does this girl need from me? And I knew, really didn't have to ask the question, because of her being, active in church and just wonderful, that pressure started. I started feeling that pressure of, I need to go on a mission. I need to be a returned missionary. She's going to want to marry a returned missionary. And so for 2 years, because I couldn't go straight away, I needed to sort myself out in the eyes of the Lord and my stake president, and prepared to go on a mission. Save a bit of money as well, because I'm still useless with money, but my parents had to help me out with all kinds, get me out of this and that. And so I felt like a mission is what I should do. And a good friend of mine said, how do you repent of not going on a mission? And that just stuck with me for ages, and I was like, oh, good grief, if I don't go on a mission, how do I repent of not going on one? So I thought, oh, grief. So I went on a mission, and ironically opened my mission papers, and I actually read out Reykjavik, Iceland. And my mum went, doesn't say that at all. I said, what do you mean? Because I thought, I'm going to play a joke. I said, obviously Iceland, Reykjavik. And Mum said, no, it says Leeds, doesn't it? And she was right. And that sort of irked me. I was like, how does she know? And I was sent to the Leeds mission. And Joe is from a place called Huddersfield, which is in the Leeds mission. And I was like, you're kidding me. I'm going to be sent to where she lives. And so, I prepared for a mission. I'm not sure how good my preparation was. I was never a scriptorian, and I think I just went along with. I'm quite a passionate person, and funnily enough, a fairly good public speaker and good at presenting. And I think, that got me to my mission. And I thought doing this, A, is the right thing, and B, will mean that I'm giving Joanne what she deserves, a returned missionary as a husband. And so I headed off to the Leeds mission.
Anything unique or important, any really significant events in your mission that you want to kind of talk about? Or
do you know what? I had a great time, but that first 6 months, that kicked my backside. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a tough time with my trainer, and I love him to bits. I'm in contact with him now. We had a great time. We had good fun, but at the same time we wound each other up. We almost had a fist fight. I almost smacked him in the face. We were in a place called Hull. Great members there, but it was a tough place, and we just had zero success. So for 6 months, I knocked door after door. We got nowhere. We had no success, and this is when I started to question, what am I doing? What am I doing? I wasn't enjoying it. It was tough. Maybe this is the wrong decision. Maybe mission wasn't for me. And even with age on my side as a 25-year-old and a more mature head, I genuinely thought in those 6 months I could just go home. Maybe I just go home. Joanne's there, and then all of a sudden at the end of my time in Hull, the first area, I get a letter from Joe saying, I'm going on a mission. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And so she then went on her mission to Dallas, Texas. So I almost felt like, okay, I'm in this for the long haul. I need to stick this out.
and if she went a year and a half, you'd be ending about the same time.
Yeah. So when I got home about 4 or 5 weeks before she did.
Yeah.
So I like to say to her that I waited for her for a mission, not the other way around. But again, I served a good mission. I worked hard. Yeah, I made some mistakes, but I was.
Meaning breaking the rules or what?
Not really. I remember being sent a CD, Jeff Buckley CD, by one of my really good friends from home who wasn't a member of the church. And this is the other thing that I look back on now. I had some really good friends who were non-members, and I didn't really say too much. I just sort of sneaked off. And I'll be honest, I was never... They knew that I was a Mormon, didn't know what it meant. I didn't really speak about it, And I think that was part of... I think it's because I felt uncomfortable with things. I felt uncomfortable with whether it was, that my beliefs should be this about homosexuality. I think I genuinely felt embarrassed, perhaps about saying to my mates, I believe that this guy was a prophet and saw God and Jesus. So I didn't really say too much. So they certainly didn't know what the rules of a mission were. And so he sent me Jeff Buckley album, which is one of my favourite albums ever. And I listened to a couple of tracks a couple of times, and I think that was about as bad as it got. But I think my mission is where I started to be confronted with things that really challenged me. One of them being a guy we met who was homosexual, and wanted to know, well, what is there for me in this life, and what is there for me after this life? Should I be baptized? Shouldn't I? And I felt so torn, and I remember just not being able to teach him. I remember not being able to teach him, and lying in bed thinking, why is this? Is this what I believe? Do I really think that a loving God would feel this way about homosexuality? And I felt that I wasn't being honest, perhaps being honest to myself, because the church teaches us almost what we should think and feel. And at those moments, the church was telling me what I was feeling was wrong, essentially. But that's not integrity, is it? That's not integrity. My sort of secret thoughts, if you like, and feelings about homosexuality, not that I ever felt that, it was just in my brain because I'd been taught that. There was just this big clash, and I remember avoiding this guy, and he wanted answers, and I really struggled with giving him answers, and that's always upset me. And then on my mission, because I wasn't a well-read person, I've got to put that out there, I never spent any extracurricular time reading about the history of the church and any extended things. I just sort of wasn't interested. I knew what the narrative was, what the general line was, and that's what I went with. And so then there was two other people that I met on my mission. One of them was a guy who was completely less active, and who, on first meeting, went and visited with him, and he gave me a handshake that I recognised was not a normal handshake. And I was like, back the truck up here. What is that? And being shocked by something outside of the temple. And I remember him telling me a few things, and me sitting there pretending that I knew what he was on about. Especially with the temple. Telling me about the roots of the temple, all the links to Masonry, Freemasonry, and me winging it. Yeah, yes, but look, let's get down to the real things here. Let's pray about this, let's study about this. And I remember that sick feeling, thinking, oh, hang on, because I'll be honest, I never felt comfortable with the temple. The only time I felt comfortable with the temple was being sat in a quiet room, and even then, I felt uncomfortable. And for me, that never felt part of the church. And I came away the first time, and I remember looking down the pews during the temple ceremony and sort of getting laughs and giggles and thumbs up from people I knew. And I just remember thinking, this is bonkers. This is absolutely bonkers. And I just kept holding on to what my dad had told me, which was, son, you won't understand everything, and everything is symbolic. Everything is symbolic. Okay, so just think about that. So towards the end of the ceremony, when I saw a black hand appear with a tattoo of lightning on, I was like, what does this all mean? Now it just so happens that it was a black brother who happened to have a tattoo of lightning on his hand.
It was a veil worker.
Yeah, it was a veil worker. And I'm there thinking, what does that mean? What does that mean? Is that specific? Is it lightning? Do I need a tattoo? Has anyone else got tattoos of lightning? Am I going to get one on the other side? I don't know. And so I just remember it being a bonkers, and I can't pretend and say, oh yeah, that was normal and that was great. No, it was bonkers. It was bonkers. And so to then get on a mission and be told certain things, well, you know that's not this, and you know that's not that, and do you know that the Freemasons have done this, and I'm sat there and I'm looking at my companion and I'm thinking, you better say something because you're the senior companion here, because I have no clue what this guy is on about. Inside I am worried and I am nervous, but I'm just going to say the right thing and bring it back onto the track we had. So there was that brother, and I won't mention him, was gay, and I struggled with that. And then there was this guy. And then there was hearing for the very first time. Yeah, so what about the 4 versions of the first vision? The what? The different versions of the first vision. There's no different versions. I know what I've been brought up with. I know what the MTC taught me. Joseph Smith went to a grove of trees, knelt down, and had the experience. So to be confronted with that, as a 25-year-old as well, because I felt like I wasn't a kid, I wasn't an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, to be confronted with that, again, I had a sick feeling. And I just thought, what does this mean? And I remember speaking to the Bishop of the ward at the time, and he gave me an explanation which you get from, the church's description. Well, Joseph Smith, perhaps his memory wasn't too good, he was only 14, and so as a 14-year-old having that experience, that's a lot to take in, and I could understand that. When we read the first vision in Joseph Smith history, it sort of lasts a few verses, doesn't it? Well, yeah, maybe that whole experience for him lasted hours, and it was like a show. First of all, the heavens opened, and then there was a choir of angels, and maybe he had 2 or 3 numbers from the angels singing, and then there was this and that, and without being disrespectful to it, that absolutely could have happened in my mind. And I thought, you know what, yeah, you're actually right. This bishop explained this to me, and then eventually, at last, after this and that, the important thing happened, the first vision. And as a 14-year-old, that would blow your mind, wouldn't it? And so, of course, he went home and just scrambled things down, and then went back to it and refined it and refined it. Little did I know that that's perhaps not quite the case. And so I just put that to the back of my mind. And I didn't even, do you know what I didn't question? And my wife and I have spoken about this. We can forgive Joseph Smith for perhaps having that poor memory and perhaps not getting it right, or forgetting, or choosing not to write this or that. But yet, we're to believe that he could quote word for word exactly what God told him. You know, I struggle with that now. I struggle with that. And never did I have the wherewithal to think back then as well. Do you know what? If God and Jesus ever appear to me, there's no way I'm forgetting that. There is no way I am going to forget that that happened. And there's no way I'm going to get it wrong in telling anyone. And that's really crucial for my transition. And so through my mission, there were a few things like that I struggled with, just put aside. And I think that was because I was with, really good companions, positive companions, and had a great mission president who got me through. And I served a good mission, and I was a district leader, a zone leader, I was AP, woohoo, hit the big time. And had a great time. And I think I did that because I was older, and I'd consider myself a people person. I think my mission president saw that and thought, he's a good one out there, and he's fun, but also can bear his testimony. So
any families or people you converted that was just a really amazing experience? Or
do you know what, it was a tough time, and I had some baptisms, and I sort of feel quite bad now. And over the past year, I've almost felt like I want to go back to those families and teach them again. Because I feel like I've deceived them. And that was really hard, because I worked really hard as a missionary. I worked really hard, and I did everything I felt was right. And I put those problems, those hiccups, those things aside and tried to forget them. And I just did what was expected. And I feel like I want to visit those people and say, okay, let's start again. Let me teach you what I now think is the truth. Here's the narrative. And if they still want to get baptized, great. But I don't want to belittle my mission, but it's sort of hard not to. And that's really tough for me, because I've been very proud of my mission, and I felt like, because of the way my life had been, those 2 years was me giving something back to the Lord and showing, look, I'm trying to get back on track here. And so to now feel I've gone out and perhaps deceived, and I know people will disagree with me, and I don't mean to offend anyone that's listening, family, friends, but what do I really think? I really think that's the case now. I think I deceived those people unintentionally, just like I don't have any ill or negative feelings towards my parents, because they taught me what they thought was the truth, and I likewise, that's what I did on my mission. So it's hard for me to think of big experiences, and that's another thing. I'm not one of those people that had massive spiritual experiences. Never have done. I've had just small things happen. And so my mission, I was really proud of it, because I made it to the end alive and after 24 months, and not early. And I just put those things aside, and you get carried away and you get lost. It's very easy just to be sort of focused on a mission, isn't it, as such? And so I came home, I waited for Joe, and in my patriarchal blessing it said, you know, that I should take my girlfriend to the temple and marry this woman. And so she came home, and for a few seconds we just made sure, hello, we hugged, and then it was really, let's carry on with life, and let's carry on with what we should be doing. And so we got married, and married in the temple.
How soon were you engaged and then married after she got home?
So I got home February 2004, and we got married in August 2004.
When did she get home?
She got home, oh, she'll kill me for this, April?
Yeah, so she got home in April, you were married in August.
Yeah, married in August.
Yeah.
But taking into account we'd met in 99.
Yeah, of course.
Dating since 2000. So I didn't feel like it was a typical Mormon shotgun wedding, which, you know, I see all the time. And I've always had issues with that. You know, so many kids just rushing in because of that pressure, that undeniable pressure to meet someone and get married. Well, I was 27 when I got back. My wife was 23, 24, and we'd been going out, we'd been dating for a couple of years, and it felt right. So, you know, I didn't feel it was rushed. So yeah, we got married in August, and that was a tough time because during those months, Joe's mum was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. So yeah, that was really tough, and we lived opposite ends of the country. So yeah, we got married and did all the right things. You know, we did all the right things. Got married in the temple, which again, we both smiled at afterwards and thought, that was bonkers. nice sentiment, you know, a nice sentiment of being together forever. And to be honest, that even now, that's something I hold on to. I hope there's eternities. I really do. Because, yeah, I do want to be with my family. But yeah, we did what is expected, and you know, carried on and had 3 children, and you know, served in various callings through church.
Not living in Wales?
So we started in Wales.
Brief drink of water.
Excuse me. I've had a sore throat this week, apologies. So we started in Wales, and I was doing various jobs. Nothing overly exciting. Worked in Cardiff Arena, where there was lots of gigs, music gigs and concerts, helping put on concerts, which was great for me because I'm a big music fan. And then I started my own picture framing workshop, framing pictures. Of course, it's obvious, isn't it? I've got a drama degree. And then whilst we were in Cardiff, a friend from church, actually, who worked for CBeebies in London, because it was based in London, told me that they were going to advertise publicly now for presenters. Now, the BBC never advertises for presenters. I don't think they ever have, and they probably haven't since, I don't think. And she said, you should go for it. Because I have always wanted to be on television, and when I was a kid, me and my sisters would actually... There's a famous children's programme that's the longest running children's programme, and it's still going now today, called Blue Peter, and it's a live show. It's like a magazine show for sort of 10 to 12-year-olds, and we pretend to play that. When I was a kid, you know, I'd be the presenter, and my sister would have a shoebox and toilet rolls, the camera, and then we'd swap, you know. So it's something I'd always wanted to do. So I went, I applied for the job, sent them a show reel that I just made up myself, and because I didn't have a show reel to show them, I'd been in an extra in a couple of things, Doctor Who, and Torchwood. I think Torchwood is that in the States?
Probably, I'm not sure.
I think so, with John Barrowman. So Doctor Who, I know that's a big deal. I was an extra.
You were in that?
Yeah, as an extra in the background, somewhere. And people always ask me about that. So, real geeks, which episode were you in? I'm like, I don't know. I was in the crowd somewhere. I was running through a mine somewhere. And I got the job. They called me back for a couple of auditions, which is when I pulled out the primary songs again. I was really lucky, blessed, I thought, and still think, to get the job on CBeebies, because a couple of thousand people went for that, and me and one other girl, Kerry, got the job. So I commuted for a while.
Describe CBeebies for...
So CBeebies is like the Disney Channel. So it's the BBC's children's channel. So it's all day, it's children's content. And I was a continuity presenter, so I was in between the programmes. So
Are these cartoons?
Everything.
Are they...
So everything from Bob the Builder to the Teletubbies to Postman Pat, and other programmes that I'm sure you won't know. So I lived in the CBeebies house, the brightest coloured set you've ever seen, and I was wearing the brightest clothes you've ever seen. And I dyed my hair and I bleached my teeth, and I smiled all day long. And it was just the best job ever, And we'd had 2 children then. We had Grace and George by then.
Real quick, how many hours a day would you work? Was it 9 to 5?
They were long days, but I was contracted for so many days a year, freelance. So I'd be perhaps nipping off to London for 2-3 days at a time, and coming back to Cardiff, and still doing a call-in in church as well.
What was it like being a face on a national program?
Do you know what? My mission president had always said, Elder Winters, do you know what the church in Britain needs? The church in Britain needs a big face. It needs a David Beckham.
David Beckham.
Yeah, this ain't no David Beckham, is it? And so, do you know, when I got the job, that's all I could think about. And one of the first people I told was my mission president, and I said, "Do you know what, President Bowen? I can do that for you. Do you know what? I've got this. I've got this position. I'm going to be a known sort of nationally amongst parents and siblings." But ironically, I never said anything, and I look back at...
Never said anything to...
I never said anything to those workers, really, apart from my very close friends, my co-presenters. I mentioned Mormonism, but very vaguely, and I can't lie. I mean, I was a useless sort of missionary.
Oh, so you're saying the country didn't really think of you as Mormon?
Oh, no, they didn't know. No, I was just, I started this job and I didn't announce, because especially when I started, we had lots of press interviews, who's these new faces on CBeebies, because it's like, I suppose, Disney, your Disney Channel, back in the day you had all Britney Spears, and not that I'm comparing myself to Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake, but it's that same job, and it's high profile, and no matter who's doing that job on CBeebies, most of the country know who you are. But I just kept it to myself. In all the press and all the interviews and all that, I didn't tell anyone I was Mormon.
Did CBeebies exist before you joined?
Yes.
How many years had it been going?
It started in 2000.
Okay.
And I started in 2009.
Okay.
So it was very established, very popular, and so I was going into that.
Okay.
And I think I sort of kept quiet because I didn't want people to think of me as the Mormon one. I didn't want them to think that defined who I was, although it does, doesn't it? Ironically. And I wanted to make my own way in what can be a really fickle business. Who knows, maybe if I'd have told them, I'd have been there for 50 years. I'd never have left, who knows. But I think then I was starting to realise, and I would question it, I would think, why am I not telling people? Why am I not? I've served a mission where I knocked doors for 2 years in the north of England and tried to tell as many people as I could, to being quite closed about it. And would tell people, that were close to me, like some of the presenters who would perhaps come and stay at my home, and because you sort of have to prepare them. Oh, we're probably going to bless the food now, so this is what that is. And I remember them being sort of, oh really, oh Mormons, oh right, okay. So we then moved from Cardiff to London, because I commuted for just over a year, and that was just a real burden on my relationship with my wife, with my family. It was a lot for her just to have the 2 kids at home. So we moved to London, and then the BBC relocated to Manchester. So we went to London. And
where you met Joe?
Yes. So we come for full circle. Exactly.
Is that family still there? Was the family?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're still there. They're still there.
That's kind of magical, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's sort of serendipitous, you could say. And we had a year in London, and we had the best year of our lives. And funnily enough, we speak about it now. Probably the worst bit about it was church. And I'm sorry if anyone's listening from that ward, but it was a bonkers ward. There were some great people, but there were some bonkers. And my first week being there, I was called onto the bishopric. A week later, I was like, good grief. I mean, let me get my sort of feet wet here. And that was a tough ward. And then we moved to Manchester, and in Manchester, that's where things started to change for me.
For the church?
Yes.
We're going to talk about that in part 2. Before we jump to that, what was it like being kind of famous? Like, were you tempted with things? Were you meeting celebrities? Were you on the red carpet? Was it sexy? Was it cool? Was it scary? Was it overwhelming? Or people snorting coke in the back room? What is it? Boring? Exciting? Something in between?
It's children's television.
You never know if there's a dark side.
It was a nightmare. The things I've seen. Images burnt into my mind. No, that I have no salacious gossip, but it was and is, because people still stop me in the street and ask for a selfie or an autograph or whatever, and it was very strange, and even though it's something I've always wanted to do, that side of things, it took me ages. I'm not sure you ever get used to it. Just a random person in the street stopping you. Excuse me, it's Alex from... It's Alex from CBeebies. Come on, it's Alex from CBeebies. He doesn't mind having you don't mind having a picture, do you? Not that I ever had a chance to say anything. Come on, come in, yeah. And I had mums, coming up and just hugging me in the street, and you're like, what is this? Who is this? And they were like, oh, sorry, you don't know who I am, but we love watching you on CBeebies. And then this one woman ran back across the road where she'd left her child in a pram. So she'd run across the road to me, chatted to me for a few minutes, and then gone, oh, my child's in the pram, I better go back. So I had some interesting moments. You get followed around places, and especially because I got young kids, we'd go to theme parks like Legoland or whatever. And the one time in Legoland, people... Now, my peripheral is amazing. I can hear and see for miles around now, because, I'd just be in the supermarket and I could just hear. So, I would just carry on, or I could see... Is that... Yes. You go and ask him. No, you say something. No, you. And often, especially if I was with Joe or the kids, once one person comes over, that's it. It's sort of like a floodgates. All people come over, and my wife would just push the shopping trolley off, and she'd be like, "I'll see you at the checkout." and so we're at Legoland, and we're sat down, and we're having lunch. We just got like a picnic lunch with the kids, and I could, I mean, because I'm surrounded by the viewers. Who's our target audience? Parents with 0 to 6-year-olds. And I'm sat in Legoland surrounded by them, you know, and this was quite early on, and I'm like, this will be fun. And you do sort of get a bit paranoid, and you're always looking around, what are they saying, what are they thinking, they're staring at me, they're staring at my wife, they're staring at my kids, they're taking pictures, because they do, and you know, you sort of have people just sort of come up to you, ching, and then often you're like, what is that all about, you know, like, do you mind if I just take a picture of you? And I'd be like, whoa, no, you can get in the picture with me. And we sat there, and one person came over, and boom, there was a massive queue, and people thought I was there doing a personal appearance. And my wife had to go and get staff from Legoland and say, so this is really embarrassing, but my husband's going to see CBeebies, and it's a really big queue of people there wanting to meet him. You couldn't help us. So that was really awkward, but it means that I get into Legoland for free from now on. So yeah, that whole fame side of thing is strange, and yeah, some of the people I've met and become friendly with, it blows my mind. You know, some musicians that I've really admired growing up, the music I listened to, and now, you know, being friends with them because of the CBeebies thing, because it's children's TV, we're a friendly face, and so people feel quite. So if I was some kind of A-list Hollywood celeb, people probably wouldn't come up to me like that. And they sort of keep their distance. There's Brad Pitt over there. Whereas for us, they're coming up and hugging us in the street, or people who just walk past and go, "Hey, Alex," and then carry on, and then come back and go, "Oh, sorry, you don't know me. I don't know. You're just the guy on the telly. Sorry," and then carry on. So that was a strange thing, and especially if. You know, because I'd often be travelling around the country for jobs and recording here and there. So going to church in different places and walking in and seeing the primary go, what's he doing here? What's he doing? It's the bloke from... He's a Mormon. He's a Mormon. And so that was quite amusing. And walking around the temple grounds, having a nice, peaceful, you know, spiritual walk around the grounds, and then hearing a kid shout, Mummy, it's Alex from CBeebies, he's at the temple." And that just made me smile. And in fact, one last thing, and it's the best email, although it really wound me up. My producer came to me one day and said, I've got an email, and I need you to have a look at this. So I read it, and it was, "Dear CBeebies, myself and my children were watching a link the other night with Alex, and he was pretending to have a teddy bear tea party and was pretending to drink tea. We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we happen to know that Alex is a member of the church. We think it's disgraceful that Alex was forced to pretend to drink tea when we know he doesn't drink tea, because we have something called the Word of Wisdom. In the Word of Wisdom, we do not drink tea, coffee, alcohol, drink," and they went on, and they demanded an apology. I cannot tell you how mad I was that someone, that a member, and if they're listening, please let me know you are, because I'd like to have a word, that they complained because I was pretending to have a cup of tea at a teddy bear's tea party. And I just, you know, I can laugh about it now, but at the time, I was like really mad. And this producer, she was saying to me, "So you're a Mormon, you are?" "Yes, yeah." "What's this Word of Wisdom thing then?" And so I explained the tea and coffee thing. But yeah, a member actually thought, this is teaching my children the wrong way. And I just thought, what is wrong? What's wrong with members? that a member would watch that and think that I was confusing their children. If you can't parent your own children enough to say that Alex is just pretending he's having a teddy bear's picnic, then I don't know. I'm not saying that's the reason for my transition.
Two more questions. Did you love the fame and attention? Did you hate it? Or was it both? Just the people coming up, the crowds,
Do you know what I like?
Was it fun? Was it awful?
No. There's only a couple of times that it's been awful and that I've refused a photo. Only once I've ever refused a photo. And that's because I was on my own with two of the kids. My youngest was in the pram screaming, and my little boy had fallen over and had a massive gash on his leg, and this person was really rude, just came over, grabbed me by the arm, come and have a photo. What was I, what? And I refused. But what was nice and what is nice is when there's a young child who's looking at me and they're like, this is my hero, this is Alex from CBeebies, and it's lovely. And it's nothing to do with ego, I don't think, because I know I've got an ego, because just to perform, present, you've got to have something about you, and of course I enjoy it, and it is nice to have people say, thanks for what you do, it's great what you do, like we all do, you know. But for me, when a child, because I remember as a youngster meeting someone famous who that I'd met on the television, seen on the television, and you do get excited, don't you? You think, wow. And so, yeah, that's nice that, you know, a child who recognises you. So, yeah, I liked it. I'm not offended by it. I don't think it's awful, but yeah, I can't say, oh yeah, I love it, but it's nice that I sort of perhaps have had some kind of effect on that child's upbringing.
Last question. Was it hard on your marriage and family for you to be famous and in this job? Or were there times when it was...
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? Yes. And if my wife was here, she would say yes, because it often felt like for her and the kids that they had to share me more than was expected, because there were times where it seemed like I was an A-list celebrity. There'd be occasions in a park or wherever it was where it just didn't stop. And I can understand why now, you know, someone like a Brad Pitt or a Tom Cruise, that they just have to leg it, that they can't just walk around in public, you know, because they're just hounded. Now, I'm not comparing it to that, but actually there were times, and I think it did have a strain. And my eldest child, whenever someone would stop in the street, she'd say, she worked this out on her own, which I thought was really quite a mature thing for such a little girl. Daddy, were they talking to Alex or were they talking to Daddy? So if they were actually a friend of mine, you know, they were talking to Daddy. If it was someone, you know, a viewer, then it was talking to Alex. And I can remember a few times where I hate turning people away, I hate saying no, I hate doing things like that, and a few times maybe I just went on too long, or maybe I just did a bit too much, or went too far, and you know, let my wife, family down a bit, and perhaps should have focused on them. So do you know what, my poor wife, it's not been all woe is me, but yeah, there have been times where it's been tough, and I appreciate that my family have perhaps had to share me with the public, which sounds really weird, and I don't mean it to be arrogant either, but actually it is the truth. So I think if I'd have had anyone else other than Joe, my wife, things, I don't know, maybe it would have been worse. Things may have been tougher.
All right. Well, I think we'll come to the conclusion of this part one of our interview with Alex Winters, who was the presenter with, and still is the presenter with CBeebies. 7 years, you said?
Yeah.
And so we're super grateful for you joining us on Mormon Stories. It's been a fascinating interview so far. And now we're going to go ahead and close part one. And we are going to come back soon for part 2. And in part 2, we are going to hear about how his testimony of the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, sort of faced some serious difficulties, and what that was like for him, and how he has or has not resolved it, and where he is now with the church. So Alex Winters, thanks for joining us for part 1 of your interview on Mormon Stories.
I'll see you in part 2.
We'll see you in part 2. All right.
Cut.
See you soon.